Sheleted is one of this week's free games on the Epic Store, continuing the trend of the Team 17 published games. Described by the devs as a deep and emotional survival game, where you take control of a family who after a global apocalypse have found their way into a deserted shelter, it is your job to keep them alive as long as you can, unless you play some of the scenarios which have their own specific tasks. Now normally at this point I'd talk about the story, but honestly the story's in the description, so let's move on. Two things I want to say right off the bat about this game is firstly, it is a time sink. It will eat away the hours. Now the game does have a speed altering option, so you can speed up or slow down time. However, it only automatically slowed down time for some events taking place, not all of them. So it can very much run away with itself. For example, you can miss radio calls, which is not good. And sadly, I often found myself with not a lot to do while other stuff was taking place. Honestly, it's probably a game I should have been playing in windowed mode while doing other things rather than actually just playing it and focusing on it solely. The second thing is that luck plays a very significant role in this game and makes a difference to how hard or easy it is. So say you start in survival mode, which is what the game advises before you play any scenarios. You have some food and water. The water is gained every time it rains, so that's not too bad. However, food can be very hard to get early game. You might get lucky and find some, or you might get lucky and find the items you need to make traps to catch animals, or you might be unlucky and everyone starves to death. So you could be very skilled at these types of games, but it is a dice roll, and if it's not a dice roll in your favour, then it's game over. But let's push those points aside for a moment. You start the game with 2 adults and 2 children. The children are basically identical to the adults in terms of what they can do, which is a bit weird. I'm not sure I would want to send my child out into the apocalyptic wasteland on their own. But maybe that's your thing, so you know you can if you want. You start off with a shelter. It has a water filter, oxygen ventilation, and a generator, as well as a radio and other general bits and bobs like food, medicine, etc. The hardest part of the game is the start. There is a point where you break through the barrier that is producing food, and you will have a much easier time. The game has some good mechanics that force you to leave the safety of your shelter. The water filter and oxygen ventilation system, for example, are both located on the surface, and it makes sense, that's kind of where they would be. And you have to go out there to fix them, because everything in the game needs fixing constantly. And to fix them you have to put on a hazmat suit, because if you go outside without that on, you get radiation poisoning. I like that little addition of realism in the fact you are forced to leave the safety of your shelter. Though for some reason your characters can go off on expeditions with just a gas mask on and be fine, so it doesn't make total sense. I would have thought they needed to wear hazmat suits all the time. Another reason you need to go outside is for resources, items and food. This is where expeditions come in. You use these to go out and explore the world around the shelter, and they can include up to 2 household members and possibly a pet depending on the pet you've taken. However, everything here is a dice roll, and while a place may be good for a particular item, chances of you getting what you wanted are probably slim, and chances of you getting a lot of what you wanted are even slimmer. These expeditions can also lead to encounters with other survivors who may be friendly or not so friendly, and in turn you can also have people visit your shelter, or try to break in as the case may be. And there are times when you will have the option to take on an additional member of the household, which comes with its own pros, cons and risks. The reality is though that while there are these random events and the element of luck to the game, the core gameplay is rather repetitive after a point. You slowly upgrade your shelter, you slowly keep cleaning it, you slowly make it bigger, you slowly replace items with better versions, and keep repairing everything constantly. All the while attending to the needs of the family and keeping their stress down. And the penny just dropped. I'm playing The Sims. And that's kinda true. It basically is The Sims with extremely limited resources and a luck mechanic to be able to progress rather than a 9-to-5 job that earns you cash. Heck, you even have to let them shower and poop. Okay, yes, The Sims is much more forgiving and no one gets stabbed, and you have to build relationships, but in a nutshell, the gameplay's kinda similar. Graphically, as you can see, it's nothing to write home about, it looks very old. And sound-wise, it's all okay. Just okay. I can't really complain, I can't really say it's fantastic. I can totally see what the devs were going for here, and it's actually good at what it does to some extent. And I did, to some extent, also enjoy what I played of the game. There are some tips and tricks and nuances that help you push past the early game, but once you're past it, you're pretty much in control. However, things like the fact you can miss a radio call and people on an expedition then just come back empty-handed just feels like a very forced way to make the game more difficult, especially when you can have the increased speed on and it just whizzes past that event. But for me, it should be stopping or slowing down at that event and alerting you to it. And then the next thing is, I kind of wish they'd made the children different, as in not have exactly the same skill set as the parents. They shouldn't be able to repair advanced equipment. However, at the same time, I understand that this would have added an additional layer of difficulty to the game, and therefore they would have had to change things elsewhere. Honestly though, the biggest issue I have with the game is how much time it takes up for what feels like very little reward. It is so slowly paced, I don't feel like I'm achieving enough for it to be worth the massive amount of time it consumes. And I spend a lot of that time just waiting for things to happen, or waiting for tasks to be complete. I would give the game a 3 out of 5. It's got a great concept, and some clever mechanics and an overall enjoyable theme. But it drops points for poor implementation of some of these mechanics, and the time vortex that it creates. Basically, it's a mobile game through and through. And I feel like it's somehow trying to be an idle game, while also not trying to be an idle game. And I feel it's lost itself a little bit in there. I think truthfully, if you enjoy this type of game, such as This War of Mine, it's worth grabbing for free on Epic till the 16th of September and giving it a go. But if, like me, you're more of a fan of things like RimWorld, then while you will definitely appreciate the game's concept, it's probably not for you, as it's a bit too slow paced and lacks that progression. But as always, I'd love to hear what you guys think of this game down below. Is it too slow paced? And have you been playing it in windowed rather than concentrating on it solely? Either way, thanks very much for watching. Please, as always, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more game reviews, and I'll see you all soon.